and which means when you go out. And next week's meeting is, or next week's Parsha is called Kitavo, when you come in. So this is when you go out for the camp. Teitzei. When you, an Israelite warrior, take the field against your enemies and your God delivers them and you take some of them captive. This particular Parsha has a plethora, I believe that's the right word, of commandments. It has, this particular portion has the most number of commandments of any other portion in the whole Torah. And it just jumps, bam, bam, bam. So a lot of times, especially if you look at the art scroll, Chumash, they will look at a way to tie it all in. So the first thing that we look at is the idea of these Israelite warriors. And the word is Teitzei l'milchama, when you go out to war, al oivecha, on your enemy, but not new, Hashem Elohecha, that your God, on his hand, has delivered into your hand. And you see among them a captive, a beautiful woman, and you desire her into your household as your wife. You shall bring her into your household. She shall basically do things to herself, trim her hair, trim her nails, so that she does not look desirable. So the whole point, a lot of this commandment, and a lot of the commandments that we see in the Torah, is that we understand, God understands, God who created us, who is the architect of the human being, understands that human beings are flawed and we have our desires. And in this case, we have our lusts. Judaism is unique among the more, how can I say this? The more common, the more popular religions, is that we acknowledge this. And we acknowledge that people are flawed. I don't know if flawed is the right word, but some of you who are new to this may not have heard me talk about the idea that we don't have perfect nervous systems. As humans, we have our challenges, we have our trials and tribulations. And it is this shell thing that we have called the body that has needs and desires that causes all our problems, that causes our temptations. Other systems say, well, the body is evil. You need to completely disassociate yourself as much as possible. You need to ignore those things. Judaism is maybe unique in that it says, yeah, we understand you've got these desires, so let's find acceptable ways to satisfy those desires, to satisfy those lusts. And what are those desires? Hunger, thirst, right? The things that keep us going. And in this case, we're all adults here, sex. That's something that adults desire. So how do we deal with that desire in an acceptable, socially appropriate manner? Now, this is giving us an extreme. It is telling us that when people go into warfare, the adrenaline is going, the passions are high. When you start defeating your enemies, which God tells us we will do because God is behind us, you're starting to feel powerful. You're starting to feel almost invincible. So they're giving you an idea of something that happens in warfare. A soldier, a successful soldier, a man who's winning the war, sees an alien woman, a woman of the enemy, and he wants her, he desires her. So obviously, there are inappropriate ways to go about doing this, and many armies do this. But what God is telling us is that we have to be above them. We have to be better than them. But we still have to acknowledge our lust. So here's the deal. If you are in the middle of warfare and you happen to see a woman that you want, an alien woman, Understand that this is not a Hebrew. This is not a Judean. This is probably a pagan or an idol worshiper, especially because back then, that's all there was. There were pagans, and then there was us. So you have a woman that is not used to our system of morality and ethics. Nevertheless, you need to respect her. So you want to bring her into her household, and there's a little bit of a difference of opinion. Either they have relationships right there, and then the man brings her back, or before the two have physical relations, this is what she has to go through. You bring her home, you've captured her, she's an alien, right? She's a foreign, a captive, she's an enemy, all right? She makes herself look undesirable. She spends a month, 30 days, in your household, lamenting or mourning. See if we can find the right Hebrew word here. Shomat Shavya Me'alecha V'yashavta Beitecha, and she stays in your house. Uvachta et avicha ve'rimacha, and she mourns. I'm not sure what this word is, but it looks like it's mourn or lamenting the fact that she's not going to see her father and her mother anymore. After that, achar kain, after that, tavo, she comes with you, alecha, with her, uv alta, and becomes v'haita lecha lisha, and becomes your wife. So this is a woman that will be your wife, not a slave, not a concubine, not somebody that you can use to your pleasure. This is a wife. And because she is a wife, you need to respect her. And you need to have gone through the process of, like, she's not that great. She's not that great looking. She's in a situation of mourning, which means she's not going to be that emotionally attractive either. Okay. But you got to respect her. And if you still want her to be your wife after 30 days, you marry her, you take her as a wife, and she is your wife, and then she is your household. She's part of your household. Okay, any questions or comments or observations on that? Okay. Now, this alien captive is now your wife in every way, every shape and form. Every way, shape, or form. I believe that's the expression. If, however, you take her and you desire, you no longer want her, then she goes free. She doesn't become a slave. She doesn't become a captive. It's a divorce. And she is a free person. She can do whatever she wants. She wants to stay with the community. She wants to go back to her people. That's her prerogative. So in other words, we've infused the idea of respect. There's no rape. There's no abuse. There is respect for this person. Now, let's presume, let's look at the fact that, let's say you two decide to be husband and wife. You continue relationship. Now look at how this flows. If a householder, if a man, v'tien la'ish, tiena la'ish te nashim, if a man has two wives, back then, multiple wives were allowed. Why? Well, the explanation that I heard is that men go to war, they work out in the fields, they herd cattle, and the mortality rate is higher than women. In other words, more men die from those situations than do women. So, while you can look at the birth rate and say it's typically 50-50, male, female, by the time we get into adulthood, more men have died because of these professions, because of what they do, working and going to war, and you have more women than men. So it kind of makes sense, because women you can have two wives who could get pregnant at the same time, and thus they propagate the species more, right? So what is that called? Polyandry? No, I forget the name. The converse is that, can a woman have two husbands? Well, back in an ancient society, when the order of the day was producing children, because there was more of an infant mortality rate back then. You had more children dying in birth, after birth, whatever. So you just kind of had to have more kids in order to make sure that your lineage was continued. So you got these two situations: less men, more women. You need to have more kids. So one man, multiple wives. To have one wife, multiple husbands, the woman can only get pregnant once every 9 months, right? And then you need a rest, and then maybe it's 10 months. She's not going to have as many kids. So that's a practical reason why this happened. Okay? So notice the flow. Man sees a woman of a people that he's helped conquer. He desires her. She's vulnerable. He takes her back to her household, shows her respect due her. She gets to look unattractive for the month, for the 30 days. And then if they still want each other, then she becomes his wife. Now, what if she is not a solo wife? What if she is part of multiple wives? What if this man's other wife is a Judean, a Hebrew, an Israelite? So here's a woman that he wants to satisfy his lust. Maybe the other wife is favored. He wants her to stay pretty for her. This other wife is the one that does a lot of the chores. She's the one that gets to walk around looking cute for him all the time. And this is a situation that reminds us of what? Anybody? What does it remind me of? I'll remind us something. Back in Genesis. Go ahead, Abby. I see you peeking up there. What does it remind us in Genesis?
Oh, Rebecca and Leah?
Yes, Rebecca and Leah. Leah was the quote-unquote hated wife. She wasn't really hated. It's just that compared to Rachel, she was the less favored wife. And guess who had the first kid? Leah. So theoretically, who was the firstborn?
Rachel.
I'm sorry? Who was the firstborn of all of the brood?
Leah?
No, Reuben.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Don't apologize. Reuben was the firstborn. Technically, and this was one of those situations that didn't play out as it should have. Reuben should have gotten, and we talked about this, the double portion, because he was the firstborn. What is a double portion? Okay, you have 4 kids. Your estate when you die is divided 5 ways. And the oldest son gets 2 of those portions. Okay, that's the double portion. Now, because of what Reuben did and the way things played out, he didn't get to have the primogeniture, the right of the firstborn. But what this, and if you look at Genesis, and we're going to go through Genesis in about a month. We're going to go have Simchat Torah, and we're going to rewind the scroll, and we're going to start doing our Torah study. We're going to start right from Genesis. You are going to see that a lot of these commandments, a lot of these mitzvot, are responses and reactions to what happened during Genesis. Rachel was the favored wife. Joseph, the firstborn of the favored wife, was the favored son. And as a result, you had all this jealousy of the other siblings. And that created problems, as we saw. They tried to trap Joseph. They want to kill him, sold him into slavery. He ended up in Egypt. Things worked out, but, at great travail for everybody. This commandment, which is kind of a repetition of in Leviticus, is that if your quote unquote hated or less favorable wife, or the one you don't like as much as the other one, gives birth first, then that is your firstborn. He gets the double portion. And there's no discussion. That's the way it is. And when it says unloved, it's really not really unloved. It's just kind of a in respect, respectful, yeah, in respect. Just that one is kind of like more than the other. So hated is just kind of a way to, really hone in the point. Torah does this. It uses certain words to make a point. Okay. All right. So let's continue. When he wills his property to his sons, he may not treat his firstborn, the son of the loved one, in disregard of the son of the unloved one, who is older, who is first. Oh, sorry, dude. Instead, he must accept the firstborn. Okay, now we have another situation, and those of you that have been through the Miller class, we addressed this. Remember the sorer the more son. Let me get you the Hebrew term. Sorer more. Isn't it interesting that defiant, the word for defiant, more, is the same word as teacher, which is the same word as arrow? See, it's that conceptual ancient Hebrew language that we study. So we have a wayward and defiant son who does not heed his father and his mother and does not obey them even after they discipline him. So they take the kid, they bring him out to the elders of the town in the public place, and they say to the elders, our son is disloyal, he doesn't listen, and really the understanding is that he gets drunk and he eats too much food, and in order to feed his quest for food and drink, he steals, he lies, he cheats. In other words, this is the beginning of what we know as today as addiction, right? That's what addicts do. They get addicted to drugs and they go out and they steal and they cheat. And now you've got a problem. Well, here it is 3,500 years ago, folks. There it is, addiction, right there. But what this kid is doing, they didn't really have drugs back then. They had food and drink, which was, again, satisfying the lusts of the body. So you bring it to the town council and they stone him to death. Now, I remember I had a group of students when we were doing this, and this one girl's jaw dropped. You could see her jaw drop from her mouth all the way down to the floor. The rabbis, just to ease everybody's feelings, the rabbi said this never happened. Never happened. It's a warning. Okay? You have so many hoops to jump through to get to the point of capital punishment that it just never, not only never did it happen, but it really couldn't happen. It's just, you just got too many things too many precursors to satisfy. So it never happened. But it's there as a warning. Okay, any questions or comments on that? Because I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it all together for you. Questions, comments? Okay. Let's look at the flow of the first part of Teitzei. And if you notice, we're not even through the first Aliyah yet. The first Aliyah of the full Kriya, the first full reading, actually, this is it right here. So here's the ultimate warning. A Hebrew soldier, a Judean warrior is out there. They're winning the war. They're feeling pretty powerful. They see a woman. They're feeling really good they're feeling real good. They're feeling real powerful. They take the woman. After the month that she looks undesirable to him, he decides he wants her anyway. She sticks around. They have a kid. The kid is not really, she's there for lust. The kid is not really loved as much as he should be. This is a pagan woman. The kid, the offspring, the son, doesn't have the morals and ethics of Torah instilled in him that a native Israelite would. So he goes off, he steals, he cheats, he indulges his temptations, his sins, and this is the end result. That's the warning. So if you're an Israelite soldier and you're out there and you're conquering an enemy, you better heed this. You better make sure you see a woman that you want, that there's a very good likelihood that this is what you're going to be dealing with. So better to leave it alone and go back to your own people than to take a foreign woman as a wife. That's the message. Questions, comments, anything? We good? Okay, let's move on.
Wait, I have a comment. So there's no maybe I missed this, so she didn't get a chance to convert?
When she becomes his wife, she is basically converted.
Well, then what's the problem?
You know how when people today, somebody approaches me and says, Rabbi Stephen, Rashbi, I want to become Jewish. And I say, okay, then what I'd like you to do, what the process is get involved in the synagogue, start coming to services. We have this 18-module course called the Miller Course, Introduction to Judaism. Then we want you to go before a Beit Din, a court of three rabbis who are judges, then go in a mikvah. And after a period of about, I don't know, let's say 6 months, you will become Jewish. Okay? They didn't have that back then. There was no synagogues. There were no communities. There was no sisterhood. There was no Beit Din. There was no Miller Course. If somebody wanted to be Jewish and you were male, all you did was get a circumcision. You waited out the 3 or 4 days in pain, and then you were Jewish. I didn't even see anything there about a mikvah. I don't even see anything here of woman about going through a mikvah. Maybe it's understood, which I can deal with, but there's nothing here about learning Torah. There's nothing here about being part of a community. So they just took her as a wife, and that was it. You're Jewish. Moses and Zipporah. Does anybody remember, those of you that have been with me with this, studying Torah since Exodus, anybody remember Zipporah converting, Moses' wife? I don't.
No.
There you go. Maybe that's why the lineage of the high priest came from Aaron and not Moses. Because we remember that Moses' son, remember on the way back to Egypt, Zipporah circumcised, who is it, Gershon? The one of the sons? I don't remember the other son being circumcised, be Jewish. And yet Moses was our greatest prophet. And Zipporah was never Jewish. I never saw anything about her converting. It was her father Jethro, when he came back after the Song of the Sea, he said, oh, now I'm accepting God as my God. I don't remember him being circumcised or going through a mikvah or studying the Miller Course. It was really, a lot of that didn't become formalized until modern times. So you got this woman who's a pagan, who's used to sacrificing humans, who's used to worshiping natural forces and trying to, Ashtoreth trees, these trees that are altars. Okay. What do they know about ethics and morals of Torah? They don't. I mean, it says, keep the woman for a month and let her be undesirable. And then if you want to take her as a wife, there's nothing there that says, oh, and teach her Torah. Right? It's just kind of understood. It's kind of like the reading between the lines that's so prevalent in Torah analysis. Does that make sense? That answer?
Yes.
Okay. So that's part of the problem. And when the rabbis see, we got modern Judaism, and a lot of people complain that modern Judaism is very severe. It's very strict. It's very demanding. And this is one of the reasons why, because the rabbis look back at this and they said, we want to continue Judaism and we want to keep it pure. We want to make sure that anybody that's Jewish is going to continue Torah, is going to continue observing the mitzvah. So this is why they put all these qualifications on it, to make sure. Okay. This is also why, even back then, and this was the start of it, that during the seventh year, the Shemitah year, when you're not out dealing with your fields and with your cattle, everybody's getting a rest. Everybody went to Jerusalem and listened to the king recite Deuteronomy for a couple of months. This was their, this is why you had Levite cities scattered all over the place. So you'd learn Torah, not just be out there in the fields, that you'd have these Levite teachers that would teach you Torah. And today it's become a lot more formalized now that we don't have a temple, or we don't have, well, we do have our ancient land now back, So this is the stringency that the rabbis put on all of this, to make sure that, it doesn't get lost or contaminated, or what's the word when you add water to alcohol? What is that called? Dilute. You see where my head's at, right? Okay. Any questions, comments on that? Okay. Now, let's keep going with this idea of respect. If any party is guilty of a capital offense, and a capital offense is something like murder, it's something that you get put to death for, and is put to death, and you impale the body on a stake, guess what? You must not let that corpse remain overnight. Even the dead person, the corpse, deserves respect. The impaled body is an affront to God, and you need not defile the land. So, first of all, there's two concepts here. The first one is that everybody is deserving of respect, even a convicted murderer. Secondly, when a convicted murderer, and this is a person that lays in wait, this is the equivalent of our contemporary murder in the first degree. Somebody who willfully plans, plots, and goes out and does it. And by the way, the penalty, the death penalty in the Torah is pretty strict. You need to have two witnesses that heard the person plotting. And you need to have two witnesses that told him, don't do it, or her. And then you need to have two people that saw the person do it. And sometimes you don't get all that. So somebody that gets sentenced to death, that it's been validated and verified. But the other point is that when somebody is put to death for a capital offense, that death is their penance. That's their, how like we go to, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and we, pray for, teshuvah, for forgiveness. Well, that's basically their penitence, being put to death. Dying is absolving you of the sin because you paid for your sin. So you see that this first chapter of this talks about respect in the worst cases. Okay, so Abby, you have some questions about the holidays. You want to talk about those at all? Abigail Elisheva?
Hi. So, well, my question was more so about the month of Elul
Okay, we can discuss that.
as basically a time for accounting for, I guess, for the soul, and just reckoning with yourself.
Okay.
And just your thoughts on that in
Okay.
general, going over the repentance process prior to Yom Kippur.
Okay. Actually, the repentance process really, in a way, does not end at Yom Kippur. It ends with Simchat Torah or Shemini Atzeret. So the month of Elul, which is the month prior to the month of Tishrei, which is the 7th month, it is the spiritual new year. It's the month when we change the year. It's kind of a lead up. So two things are happening in the month of Elul. We are preparing ourselves for penitence by reciting Psalm 27. If you want to see Psalm 27, I can bring it up here. Let me know. And the second thing is the blowing of the shofar, which unfortunately, since we're in San Clemente and we're unfortunately stuck here for another couple of days, so you and I have an appointment, and I'm going to ask you we can delay that for a few days until we get back there. So we blow the shofar, which is waking up the soul. So that's preparation. We get a month preparation. Once Rosh Hashanah happens, the beginning of the year, the idea of New Year's resolutions, this is the ultimate New Year's resolutions, and we've been doing this for over 3,500 years. Okay, this is our New Year's resolution. So we ask for teshuvah, and the word teshuvah means to return. The reason we sin is because we've strayed from the covenant. We've strayed from performing the mitzvah that we agreed to do. And you see, as we've just discussed in this parsha, why do we sin? Because of this thing, this body thing that we have that has desires, lusts, and needs. Right? You look at somebody who's homeless and hungry, what are they going to do? They're going to steal. Right? That's why there's tzedakah. That's why there's charity, to help people get back on their feet. Okay, that's why here you give interest-free loans so that people have the dignity to start over again. And if an interest-free loan is not enough, you take that person in and you let them work for you on your business because you're successful and they're having some hard times. This allows them to build up some assets so they can go back out and get a second chance at supporting their family. Okay? So the idea is that we sin because of the temptations of the body. You know, why do people steal? They're hungry. They're not able to satisfy their needs. So it's our job as people, as human beings, to help people find legitimate ways to satisfy those needs. It's when people don't satisfy those needs legitimately is when they sin. So one of the things we do, Rosh Hashanah, and put that in your back pocket about Yom Kippur, is we start acknowledging our sins. We go through a laundry list, 2 laundry lists. One is the vidui, which is the confession. Asham knew, God knew, right? We discuss our sins, which, by the way, 4 of those, and they follow the Hebrew alphabet, so there's about 26 of them. 4 of them involve bad speech, lashon hara. So tells you how bad speaking about others in a bad way is so prevalent. Then we have the al-chet for the sin of, and we recite them all. Now, maybe we've sinned and we don't really realize that it was a sin. We don't realize what we did. So it's a laundry list that covers us. And there's also a plural, which means we've sinned as people, we've sinned as a community. And we do that to bring our attention, to bring our awareness, to wake ourselves up, like the shofar, to wake ourselves up to the fact that we need to be aware that we are human, we have failings, we've missed the mark, and yet we need to go back to observing the commandments because that's what keeps us on track and honest. So between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we include certain passages in our prayers. And one of them is Avinu Malkeinu, Our Father, our King, which is recited right after the Shachrit during the week. There's not really any repentance done during Elul. The repentance is really during the high holidays. The only real it's just an awareness. Elul is an awareness. And I just wanted to make sure I was correct. So I looked up Avinu Malkeinu in the Art Scroll Prayer Book, and that's recited between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So it's not even recited during Elul. Elul is still kind of a nice month. Elul, I'm trying to remember what the initials means, but it's kind of a loving month. And I forget exactly what the Elul means, but they're kind of a contraction of a couple of Hebrew words about love. So the actual repentance doesn't really start until really Salichot, which is the Shabbat. That's at least 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. So, I know that we talked about, looking at your negative traits and stuff, but I think personally that's going a little over. That's just me. I think it's going a little overboard. Enjoy the month of Elul. Prepare yourself for the fact that you're going to get big into it for those 10 days, Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur and the 10 days between. Otherwise, I think this is my own personal feeling, it's kind of like overkill. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Rabbi.
All right. Thank you. And again, it's not like the process of repentance is only done during, the high holidays. If you've looked, and I know most of you have, at the weekly Amidah, we've got a whole series, a whole process, a whole flow of, after the first 3 prayers, our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God's might, Machaya Bekim, to revive the dead, God's name, Ha'el Kadosh, and during the 10 days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's HaMelech HaKadosh, the Holy King. Then we start having all these repentance things. Give us wisdom, give us awareness, forgive our sins, let us redeem ourselves. See? So you got those 4 prayers every day of the week, except Shabbat and festivals. So we're always mindful of what we've done. It's just that, sometimes we fall short during the year. So this is an opportunity to really hone in and say, okay, let's make sure. Let's really make sure we look at our failings and we change our actions. It is said that God will accept your plea for forgiveness when God puts you in the same situation as you were in before, to see what you do, see if you change your way to the better, and then you're forgiven. And I think that's kind of Kabbalah. So that's kind of the mystical end of it. And on Yom Kippur, I'm going to give you this and then we'll move on unless you have any other questions. One of the reasons we fast and deny ourselves for those 26 hours is for you to prove to yourself that you are better than your temptations, that you can control your bodily lusts, your bodily urges for food, drink, and whatever, by going without food and water or drink and other pleasures for 26 hours. If you can do that, then resisting temptation the rest of the year is a piece of cake. Questions, comments? Okay, let's move on. So we're talking about respect. If you see your fellow Israelites, ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. You must take it back to your peer. Now, when this commandment, when this mitzvah was first discussed in Leviticus, if I remember correctly, there's kind of a rhetorical question there, like, would you let your fellow suffer? Would you let the animal suffer? No, of course not. You go in hell. The rabbis, the sages say that if you have 2 men whose ox or sheep has gone astray or fallen, the person you helped first is the one you like the least. If your fellow does not live near you, you do not know who the owner is, you bring it home, it remains with you until your peer claims it, then you give it back. The idea of finders, keepers, losers, weepers is completely foreign to Israel. We don't believe in it. It's not yours. You don't get to keep it unless somebody gives it to you. You make sure that that it's returned to the rightful owner. Excuse me for a second. I just want to grab some more. Despite, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether you like the person. So you see how these commandments work, how these mitzvot work. It's not about doing favors, friends favors, or it's not about who you like and don't like. It's about doing the deed. Period. End of story. It takes all the guesswork out of it. And here's the one: if you see the animal falling on the road, do not ignore it. You must raise it together. And this is where it says, would you let the animal suffer? No, of course not. You go up, you help the animal up. You help your fellow bring the animal up. Okay, respect for genders. A woman must not put on a man's apparel, nor shall a man wear women's clothing. Personally, I'm still trying to figure out how that works back 3,500 years ago when everybody wore robes. I don't know how you just, it is what it is. If along the road you chance about a bird's nest in any tree on the ground with fledglings or eggs, mother sitting on the fledgling on the eggs, you do not take the mother together with the young. Notice this thing about respect. Respect even the animals. An animal falls, you help it up. You want to get the bird's eggs, to eat or whatever. Don't do it while the mother's around, because that bird has feelings. It's got the maternal instinct. Why do you think it's sitting on the nest? Excuse me. Similarly, okay. Now we're into the third aliyah. When you build a new house, make sure you make a parapet, a gate on the top, so nobody falls off. Somebody falls off, next thing you know, you got a blood avenger, you got to go to the Levite city, you got to get the rabbis involved to make a case, and then you got to stay, just put a fence around it and don't worry about it, so nobody falls. You shall not sow your vineyard with a second kind of seed, else the crop, the seed you have sown in the, okay, this is called, where is it, Shotness? Oh, Kalayim. This is called Kalayim. Putting Shotnez is when you put wool and linen together. So Kalayim is when you plant two varieties of seeds together, and what they're saying is don't do it. Now, why don't we plant two types of seeds in the same field or together? Why don't we mingle wool and linen? Some people say, well, because God creates things specific and you don't go against God's will. By putting things together, by trying to mix and match God's creation, you're going against God's design and God's plan. By putting wool and linen, same thing. Also, wool is an animal fiber, linen is a plant fiber. You don't mix plant and animals. The bottom line, many sages will say, is it doesn't matter why. There is no logical reason. It's a decree. It's a hukat. It's God's plan. God said it, you do it. It's like kashrut. Why cows and not pigs? Well, we can figure it out. We could try figuring it out until the cows come home. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter. God said it, we do it. Do not plow an ox and an ass or a donkey together. Okay? That's kind of an easy one. An ox is a big animal. A donkey is a smaller animal. You put them together, the ox is going to end up doing most of the work. The donkey is going to be dragged along, and both the animals are going to get really pissed off at each other. So you don't want to do that. You've got two oxen, two donkeys, and everybody's happy. You, the ox, the donkeys, everybody's having a good time. Okay? You shall make tassels on the four corners of your garment with which you cover yourself. What is that? He asked. What are the little tassels that we make? The arba konfot, the sotcha, for what are they, Abby?
Teitzei.
Teitzei, you bet. CT. Somebody was, I think I read a commentary that said that, the ancient peoples would make knots to remind themselves. I asked this of people, and I guess I'm just too old, but back in my day, back in the old days, old school, when you forgot your homework in school, and I know I got a couple of teachers here, the teacher would tie a string around your finger to make sure that you went home and that you remembered the next day to bring that homework in. They don't do that anymore, right? It's considered abusive.
No, because if you tie a string around your finger, then you forget what you tied it for.
Come home. Why is there a string around your finger?
Exactly.
Well, come on, your parents, that. They did that with you when you were kids. Teacher gives you a note, you lose the note. What happened to the note? I don't know. Where's the string around? I don't know. Call the teacher. Why is the string? So he remembers his homework. Ugh, whatever. Okay, so now we got a man who takes a woman as a wife. This is where we get into the R-rated stuff. And he got a woman and wife now. We know that in Judaism, theoretically, and I use the word theoretically, not so today, but theoretically, that woman's supposed to be the first man she's ever slept with. And vice versa, by the way. And the man cohabits with her and decides he doesn't like her and says, oh, she's not a virgin. She lied to me. She wasn't a virgin. Okay, so now we get what's the Torah equivalent of a receipt. So the girl's father and mother produce evidence. Okay, and I know I've got, some women here, and you all know what that evidence is, that she's a virgin. They present it to the elders, and guess what? This guy's stuck with her for life. You may not divorce her for any reason because you were a prick about it, sorry. But that's basically it. Because you tried to dishonor a woman, an honest woman, for no reason other than you decided you didn't like her after getting married, you now get to spend the rest of your life with her. Which, by the way, she's a good person and you should enjoy it and you should appreciate it. Again, this concept, this idea of respect, of an orderly society where nobody takes advantage of people and everybody treats people with kindness, whether you want to or not. The idea of love your neighbor. What is love your neighbor? Nobody can be commanded to love somebody. My interpretation, I think I've read this before, but it's just the way I personally feel, is that act as if you love your neighbor. Show them a love, show them respect. That's how you love your neighbor. And that's how you keep a peaceful and orderly society. Just like this, people know going in, if you marry somebody and you decide you don't like her, you better have a damn good reason because otherwise, this is it. And you certainly don't want to produce a son, who's so rare and moray, who's wayward and oppositional, because that's what's going to happen when you have a dysfunctional family. See, even then, 3,500 years ago, they warned us. You have a dysfunctional family, this is what you're going to have. This is what you're going to produce. This is really kind of a good portion. It's got some wisdom in here that is just, way ahead of its time. We all should be proud that we respect Torah so much and that we learn Torah, because if the world would do this, we'd have no more problems. But they don't want to. They want to indulge the people sin because they want to indulge their egos. That's why they do this. That's why we have problems in the world. People want to indulge they don't want to control their temptations. And temptations isn't just about bodily issues. It's about emotional issues too. I need to feel good, so I need to bully people. That way I feel powerful, and you get that. And that's what this is all about.
Rabbi, in Kabbalah, that's all okay. That's just part of the mission. It's part of your correction.
Mhm.
If you get bullied, just take it. If you
Really?
bully, then, you just learn from it. It's just all part of it,
I think I'm missing
part of
something.
your growth.
So if you're bullied, you just accept it?
Actually, if somebody lashes out at you and bullies you
Yeah.
and you don't let it offend you, it's sort of yeah, you've kind of reached a higher realm.
Oh, okay. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. And
So it's really they're blessing you.
yeah, yeah. And my background, I wrote a book about self-esteem. And absolutely, you believe in yourself. Now, if they cross the line and physically assault you, now you're into a different realm. Now you're into something different. But you're right. If people are harassing you and emotionally bullying you, and I don't mean these pro-Hamas terrorists on campuses that are preventing Jews from going to class. That's different. That's assault and battery.
Right.
But I mean people that are teasing you, you just need to decide, I respect myself. My respect does not come from you. It comes from me, and the fact that you're calling me names is really a testament on you, not me. Yeah, that's modern psychology. That's self-esteem. I totally agree with that. And this is a way for you to get stronger. When other people see you standing up to that and not cowering, people are going to respect you even more. And they're going to see that you are now their role model. So absolutely. Okay, so, oh, by the way, if the guy is found lying about the girl, saying that she's not a virgin and prove that he is, he gets flogged. He gets lashes, 39. And they fine him 100 shekels. Give it to the girl's father. And moreover, she shall remain his wife forever. He shall never have right to dishonor him. So, dude, you better be right.
Yeah, because how do we know he didn't just want to maybe, I know,
Stop.
okay, so yeah, just maybe kind of satisfy his
Lust,
urges, and
right?
then he wants to do away with her by saying, oh, she's unclean, she's not a virgin, and then let me do away with her, and then, bear
Exactly.
false witness or whatever, and, you know,
Exactly. And let's go to the beginning of this parsha, which said exactly the same thing about an alien woman. You want to take her as your wife, you better be sure, because she's going to be your wife. You want this woman as your wife, you better make sure it's not, you're not lustful, right? You better make sure that this is somebody you really want to be involved with, because you may end up being stuck. Not that you'd be stuck, but you know what I mean. This will be your wife forever. So absolutely, you have to respect people. You can't just decide, well, all right, I've had my fling, I've had my fun, I'm done. Nope, doesn't work that way. You have to respect people. Women's rights. Now, if it is true, then she gets capital punishment because she deceived them. Speaking of which, if a man is found lying with another man's wife, and this is for all, I know people have said, well, Torah is not fair because it's all about the man, not the woman. Okay, well, here it's about both of them. The man and the woman shall die if they cheat. This is adultery. A man and another man's wife, they both. Not just the woman, both. The man and the woman, because you violated a married woman. All right, so there are stipulations. If you have a woman who is engaged to somebody, who has gone through Kiddushin, and she is, for all intents and purposes, married, even though she hasn't gone through the formality of chuppah yet, then she might as well be married. So there's two stipulations. You take the two of them out to the gate because the girl did not cry out for help. She took it. She wanted it. If she cries out for help, of course, that's a different situation. Then they go arrest the man and they deal with him. Now, what if it's open country? What if it's outside of town? The woman happens to be walking by herself, which, by the way, should never happen. You don't let an unmarried, vulnerable woman walking out in open country by herself, especially when you have areas surrounding with people that don't respect people. Make sure she's accompanied. But if it happens and a man happens upon her.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, excuse me. How is that different from Islam?
My first thought is, who cares? This is what we do. This is what we do. If the woman is out in open country and she can't cry out because there's nobody to hear her, and he assaults her, then he is put to death. She cried out, there was nobody to help her.
But it's not that a woman always has to be in the company of a man type deal?
Well, it's a good idea, but you don't see that here. It's not, it's all right. So I know where you're going with this, I think. Okay. You're saying, well, the woman's at fault because she should have been with a man and therefore it's on her. No, we don't believe that. We don't believe that. We believe that everybody is responsible for your own body. If you're a man and you're not controlling your desires, that's on you. It's not on the woman because she looks gorgeous. We don't believe that. Now, the Orthodox, of course, they take steps. They make sure that, men are not in a position where they would be tempted. If a man and a woman are in a car, they're not married, well, the man sits up front, the woman sits in the back. The woman is not supposed to wear desirable clothes, and, it's probably a good idea anyway. Theoretically anyway. So, because men get attracted, but if a woman's wearing a short skirt, or these bathing, we're down at the beach, you see the two pieces that these girls are wearing, they're very, very revealing, and a man happens to not be able to control himself, it's on the man, it's not on the girl. Yeah, you could chastise her for wearing something skimpy like that, but at the same time, the guy's like, dude, you need to be in control of your body. This is your responsibility. It's you. That's Judaism.
Right, because even in Christianity, they say if your eye offends you, pluck it out. If your hand causes you to steal, cut it off.
No.
So the responsibility is on you.
Well, the responsibility is on you. That's why we have Yom Kippur. That's one of the reasons you fast. You afflict yourselves for 26 hours to prove that you're better than your lusts. Men have ways of dealing with it. I'm not going to get too into it, but you know what I'm talking about. You don't blame someone else for your failings. You take responsibility. That's what the vidui, the confession's all about. That's what the al-chetz, I've sinned, are all about. Take responsibility for your own temptations, for your own desires, for your own body. Don't put it on somebody else. That's too easy because, it's all about behavior modification. If you don't get rewarded or punished for good and bad actions, respectively, guess what? If you don't get punished for bad actions, there's no reason for you not to do them. That's what this is. This is Skinner before Skinner, right? Punishment, reward. So what they're saying is that, man, you are at fault. You need to take responsibility. And if you don't, we will. And we will punish you. Not the woman, we will punish you. But you shall do nothing to the girl. The girl did not incur the death penalty for, this is the case of one party, the man, attacking and murdering another. What they did, he murdered her. He took something very valuable from her. And it's that serious. Welcome to Judaism. See, came upon her in the open, and the engaged girl cried for help, and there was no one to save her. So not only is it on the man, it's only also on the town. And is this, gosh, I get my parshas mixed up sometimes, folks. I want to go to the end here because I want to look at something. I know we're coming to the end of our time anyway. Is this the one where if somebody is found murdered, or was that last parsha? Oh, this is Amalek. Yeah, all right, no. So in last parsha, at the end of the parsha, what did we see? We saw that somebody found a person who was dead in the middle of a field between two towns. And they measure the distance, and they find out which town that person's body was closer to. Then they go to the elders, they bring them out, they show them the dead body, and they say, why did you let this person go by themselves without any type of escort to maybe help protect him from marauders or bandits? We are all responsible for each other. And this is where they cut off the head of a calf, and they wash their hands in the blood, and they say, we had nothing to do with it. We tried. We did our best. That's part of this too. It's all connected. You do nothing to the girl, other than be guilty that she was out there on her own and you didn't, try to escort her or, accompany her, or you left her on her own. Why would you do that? She's vulnerable, as you can see. Back then they didn't have, even today, there are places where you don't have that level of morality. But there it is. Okay, questions, comments on that?
No.
Okay,
But
now
but what how many more minutes? We're about done, right?
Say what?
We are about done.
Oh, we're getting there. Why? You have a question?
Oh, okay. No, because I want to ask you something like when we're done.
Individually or in a group?
No, we can be in a group.
Go ahead, ask it.
Okay, so I have a couple of Kabbalists that I like to listen to during, just whenever, but one of them said something that was very, he was talking about everything that's going on in the Middle East right now and in Israel. And he said something very kind of disturbing that I wanted to run by you.
Yeah, go ahead.
See what your thoughts were.
Go ahead.
He said that Hitler, hate to bring up that name, he said that Hitler would gas us and would put us in ovens, that the hate Hitler had for Jews is nothing compared to the hate that Hamas has for Jews because they want blood. How do you feel about that?
Okay, so I think there's some truth to that. I think it's all the same though. These people also have hatred for it. It's Jew hating. I'm not even using the word anti-Semitism anymore. I use the word Jew hating more. And if you notice, cancel culture and wokeness doesn't exist anymore. It stopped existing on October 7th, 2023. That's when everybody started attacking the Jews. People say, where did this come from? It's always been there. But it became institutionalized. People found acceptable ways of rationalizing hatred against Jews, just like Hitler did, by saying that it was our fault that Germany had that depression. What if there were social media back then? Do you think you'd have people marching in the streets going, well, they're doing it now, saying Hitler was right. But you think they'd be protesting saying, oh, we shouldn't destroy Germany. We were responsible for their depression. Let's let's negotiate with them. How would that have gone over? Are you kidding? When Osama bin Laden and his ilk blew up the World Trade, it's September 11th today, right? What if somebody had said, well, we are going in and we are, trying to take over the Middle East, so they've got a point. We should negotiate with him. We shouldn't really attack him. He's got a point. You'd be bounced out of this country if you were even alive. It's absurd. And yet Israel, they're going on, well, we need to negotiate terms. Let's talk about behavior modification. If you know that you can go into a country and take hostages and then negotiate for the release of convicted murderers and it'll be accepted, what reason do you have not to do this? You don't. It works. Keep doing it. That behavior is being reinforced. This was going to be my sermon, by the way, Friday night. See what you did?
Good. I'm glad. We need to talk about it. And I know that people get upset when we talk about it, but we need to talk about it.
What's to get upset about? What are we getting upset about?
I know people are like, I don't want to hear about this right now and this and that.
You need to hear about it. I get on my Instagram feed, and I know some people are getting really burnt out by it, I've been told. My Instagram feed, I get so many different posts from Stand With Us, JTV channel, the Zionist movement, different things. And one of the posts said, the reason why you're hearing all of this and why you're getting inundated with this is because the last time this happened, nobody said a word. I just saw a video of a Jewish guy standing there going, we're having a rally. And if you notice, nobody's burning any flags. It's peaceful. I don't know how many of you saw the debate. This is another thing I was going to talk about. The debate between Harris and Trump last night. I
missed it.
I was kind of disappointed that while they talked about Israel and Gaza, as they do, because it's a hot issue, nobody said anything about Jews being harassed on campus. And I wish they would have. I wish somebody would have asked, or the moderators would have said something. I would have loved to hear what either one of them would have said. I know what they would have said, but it's talk. I want to see action. All of a sudden, free speech is okay. 2 years ago, when we had, Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ rights, you couldn't say a word. You couldn't even use the term master bedroom anymore. And yet today, people could say River to the Sea, Zionist is murder. You can say all that. That's okay.
Yeah.
So
when did the word Zionism become equivalent to terrorist? I don't understand. Ridiculous.
Well, it's people are rationalizing. They're trying to institutionalize anti-Semitism. And we can't let that happen.
Exactly.
Okay. So it looks like everybody's getting tired and leaving. Okay. So we're going to close there. And any final thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, then everybody have a good night. Thank you for joining. And we will see you whenever.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Rabbi.
Thanks for joining us. You guys have a great night.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.